Money has had such a long and colorful history that some real facts about them can be downright strange, and it's those strange factoids that we're going to be discussing today. From the high qualifications needed to be a money engraver to the fact that the money in your wallet more than likely contains illegal drugs, here are the strangest facts about moolah. Our first strange fact is, it's kind of like going to med school. Not many of us know the ins and outs of how money is made, which I think is kind of what the government wants. If the general populace knew the exact process in making them, I'm pretty sure that quite a few enterprising people would print them themselves. But that's besides the point, and also illegal. Part of the money printing process is the engraving of plates with the design of those banknotes. It takes a skilled engraver to make the fine details necessary for bills, so believe it or not, it can actually take an entire decade of apprenticeship in order for a person to be a fully qualified banknote engraver. That's kinda like going through med school. Our next entry is, "In lawsuits we trust." The phrase "in God we trust" is a hallmark of US currency, but it hasn't always been that way. It first appeared on all full half and quarter dollar coins in 1908, on pennies in 1909, and on dimes in 1916. But it wasn't until 1957 when they started to appear on paper bills. However, some don't have this blatantly religious statement. One even took the US government to court about it. Chicago native and self-proclaimed Satanist Kenneth Mayle filed a federal lawsuit back in May of 2017. According to him, the implicit religious message of the statement violated his rights. Quite expectedly, the judge almost immediately threw out the case. Mayle did file an appeal, but lost that as well. Our next entry is the face of money. Seeing a person's face on money is pretty much common all over the world. That's why I was surprised to find out that people in the US were initially against putting faces on money. It all boils down to the history of American independence. You see, the British used the faces of monarchs on their banknotes. After the Americans won the War for Independence, they didn't want to be reminded of the time when they were under British rule. Hence, the earliest coins produced as an independent country featured no human faces, but rather symbols like Lady Liberty and the bald eagle. That is so violently American, I love it. Although granted, All About the Liberties doesn't have the same ring as All About the Benjamins. Our next fact is unchanging. Counterfeiting money is a serious issue worldwide. One of the things governments do to try and combat this is by periodically redesigning their banknotes. The US redesigned the $100 note in 1996 for precisely this reason, followed by other banknotes in the succeeding years. This was the first major change in decades. However, one US note has stood the test of time and has remained unchanged for more than half a century, that being the humble $1 bill. One of the reasons for it not needing to be changed is the fact that the $1 bill is rarely counterfeited, if at all. But that's not the only major reason. It was actually the vending machine industry who appealed to have the bill untouched, as it would cost them millions to overhaul their machines. I wouldn't expect it to change anytime soon either. The omnibus spending bill of 2015 actually made it illegal to change the almighty $1 bill, so good old George Washington is gonna look as happy as he usually does. Our next entry is almost all the colors of the rainbow. Speaking of counterfeit money, redesigning bills isn't the only way to prevent the dastardly acts of counterfeiters. All banknotes will have other security features built into them. In the case of US banknotes, each denomination is embedded with a security thread that will glow a different color when put under UV light. $5 notes glow blue, $10 notes orange, $20 notes green, $50 notes yellow, and finally the $100 note a nice shade of pink. Of course, for reasons previously mentioned, there are no security threads on the $1 note. Our next fact is, less costs more. This may sound counterintuitive, but this is a verifiable fact. The $1 bill is the costliest banknote to produce. Printing a single $1 banknote costs about 5.6 cents. Compare that to the mighty $100 bill, which costs 13.2 cents per note to print. Okay, yeah, you think I may have already contradicted myself there, but hear me out. The cost is actually different from costliness. Costliness pertains to the cost proportions relative to the value of the final product. In other, easier words, it only takes 0.132% of the value of a $100 bill to print one. Now compare that to $1's 5.6%. That is one costly bill for such a little value. Our next entry is paper ain't paper. Contrary to what you've been believing for all your life, and despite how it's called, paper money isn't actually made of paper at all. That explains why the 20 bucks you left in your pants pockets didn't disintegrate in the washing machine, unlike the receipt you had in the same pocket. Paper money is actually made of 75% cotton and 25% linen. At least that's in the US. Other countries have actually adapted plastics as their material of choice, most prominently Australia, whose citizens embrace a beach-centric lifestyle. The change prevented a lot of bills from being destroyed each year due to getting wet by saltwater. Our next entry is, coins are made in only a handful of cities. There are literally billions of coins circulating in the US right now, so it's actually amazing to think that all of those pennies, dimes, and quarters were minted in one of a few only authorized minting facilities. The 4 mint facilities are located in Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, and West Point, New York. Although considered a mint facility, Fort Knox is just a repository as well as the National Mint's headquarters in Washington, D.C. Our next entry is, all US bills come from only 2 places. You think coin minting facilities are rare, bill printing facilities are even rarer. Currently, there are only 2 locations where US bills are being printed. One facility is in, of course, Washington, D.C. The mother facility, though, was in Fort Worth, Texas. However, not all that long ago, all bills were printed in D.C. The Fort Worth facility was only opened in 1990 to serve the money printing needs of the western United States, as well as serving as a backup just in case anything happens to the Washington, D.C. facility. Our next entry is weird nicknames. If you're in the US, you probably heard someone refer to money as dough or cheddar or moolah or cash or some other weird nickname. While those do sound weird, they're practically normal sounding when compared to the kind of nicknames people from other countries give their money. For instance, they're called toads in Denmark, pasta in Spain, lobster in Australia, and mosquito in Germany. There are a ton of them from all over the world, so if you're bored and need to amuse yourself for a few hours, why don't you search for all of them? That should be a good few hours of your life well spent. Is it racist to say I'm surprised that pasta wasn't for Italy? Moving on. Our next entry is stamp to pay. Life was hard during the US Civil War. I should know, I read about it a little bit. There were food shortages, disease was rampant, not to mention the loss of life. What you probably didn't know was that there was also a shortage of coins. As the style was back then, coins were made from precious metals such as silver and gold, and due to the uncertainty of the times, people were holding on to them. To address this situation, the government at the time started to accept postage stamps as a form of payment. This is also why the government started printing fractional currency in 1863. These were bills that had a value of less than $1. Our next entry is, modern bills are actually small change. The $100 bill is the largest bill currently being issued by the US government, and it's been that way since 1969. Before that, the $100 bill kinda looked like chump change. Prior to 1969, the US government actually issued bills in denominations of 500, 1,000, 5,000, and even 10,000. All these notes are still legal tender today, but most of them are in the hands of collectors and in mint or near mint condition can fetch prices of more than face value. However, by far the largest note ever printed by the US is a $100,000 gold certificate printed from 1934 to 1935 but was only used for transactions among Federal Reserve banks. Our next fact is, most of the US money isn't actually in the US. There is nearly $2 trillion worth of US currency in circulation. While it's easy to think that most, if not all, of that is circulating within the good old US of A, it's not actually true. According to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, they estimate that between half or even 2/3 of that money in circulation is actually not on US soil, but rather in the many countries that the US dollar uses as their currency. Examples of these countries are Guam and Ecuador. So depending on where you're at currently, you may not have to have your bens exchanged. Now it's time for the day's best pick. No, you're not seeing things. That is a real coin, a real gold coin that has a face value of $1 million. Get to know more about this strange piece of currency next with the Big Maple Leaf. This is the Big Maple Leaf. Shocking, I know. A giant commemorative coin minted by the Royal Canadian Mint in 1997. 6 of them were made, with each one having a face value of $1 million, Canadian of course. It measures an inch thick, 20 inches in diameter, and weighs a back-breaking 220 pounds, so it definitely wouldn't fit inside your standard coin purse. Oh, and did I forget to mention, it's made of 999.99 out of 1,000 pure gold. That's as pure as you can actually get right now, folks. It's called the Big Maple Leaf because of the large maple leaf on its reverse side. The other side features the image of Queen Elizabeth II. One of these coins is currently valued at $4 million. Canadian or US, I don't know actually. Before we move on, do me a favor. My analytics show that only about 15% of you watching are actually subscribed. Come on guys, what's up with that? Can you guys please hit the subscribe button? You guys watch my videos every day anyway, so you might as well subscribe and keep up to date with every video we put out. Our last entry is drug money. Would you believe me if I told you that around 85 to 95% of all bills circulating in the US is drug money? Not in the sense that all of them have been used to purchase illegal drugs though. What I meant was these bills literally have drugs physically on them. In 2009, chemist Yu Zhu of the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth found that most of the bills in circulation contained traces of cocaine. In fact, bills circulated in Detroit, Los Angeles, Miami, Boston, and a few other major cities in the US tested for cocaine 100% of the time. I'm really not surprised about Detroit, honestly. Compared to countries like China and Japan, which tested at 20% and 15% respectively, it seems that the US citizens are most likely to partake in the magic nasal powder. Please don't try to snort your money at this video. That would just be stupid. Which of these strange facts blew your mind? Let us know down below in the comments. Also make sure to check out the channel's other amazing content. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Later, everybody.